Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 3 of Squared Circle News Network. I am your host, as always, Darren Patrick, and as always, I want to thank you for joining me here. Thank you for taking the time to click on this video, and if you've made it this far, please click that like button, and also don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget the little bell. Click on that so whenever I upload new content, you're going to be made aware, and you can keep following me and keep up to date on all the news coming out of this channel. I haven't posted anything last week with the Easter week that was coming up. Easter Sunday being yesterday, I was extremely busy with family commitments, so I apologize for not keeping you up to date. There wasn't a huge amount of news last week, but I'm going to catch up on anything that I missed and cover everything that's important today. So I am actually going to start this week with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Just on the 4th, Will Ospreay defeated Kota Ibushi to win the IWGP Heavyweight title, taking possession of that new belt. If you haven't seen the new belt, you can go online. You can find it at any of the wrestling websites is going to have pictures of that. I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to start integrating photos and videos as needed on this channel, so that as I talk about things, it'll be a lot more consumable and easy to understand and follow. But Kota Ibushi, very short title reign, very surprising. Kota Ibushi is undoubtedly one of the most talented performers in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He is, without a doubt, top 5, possibly top 3. And for his title reign to be as short as it was, he just defeated Jay White just so recently, just a matter of a week or so ago, a couple weeks at the most. And to have lost already to Will Ospreay, not saying that Will Ospreay does not deserve it. Will Ospreay is also one of the top talents in New Japan as well as the world, and certainly deserves any title, any accolade that comes his way. But just still can't get over the surprise of Ibushi already losing this title. This is really came out of nowhere. So I don't know. We're just gonna have to follow this and see where it goes with the new title design. Of course, New Japan has retired the old style heavyweight belt, the World Title Championship, and the Intercontinental Championship, and they sort of merge them and integrate them into this new style. I don't dislike the new style, but I just feel like the tradition and the legacy that was attached to the old style belt, and it was, in my opinion, the old style New Japan IWGP heavyweight title belt was probably the most beautiful belt in pro wrestling. It's just, and it was worn by so many unbelievable superstars, including Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, Tanahashi. The list goes on and on. So many just amazing world title holders. Jay White, of course, in that mix. But it was sad to see the old title go. I'm sure the new title will grow on us. It's like I said, I don't dislike it. It's a little loud and a little big for me, but it's not something that I can say I just don't like looking at. It's just going to take a little getting used to. But immediately following the match where Will Ospreay defeated Kota Ibushi, he called out Kazuchika Okada. He wants Okada to be one of his first defenses, and anybody that gets in the ring with Will Ospreay and somebody the level of Kazuchika Okada, this is going to could wind up being an absolutely legendary all-time great match. I mean, we've seen what Okada did with Kenny Omega. He's just wrestled so many top talents and just brings his A game with everyone. And Okada is definitely the most revered wrestler by fans in Japan, and that's for a reason. He backs up everything that he's quiet. I was gonna say he backs up everything that he talks about, but he doesn't talk a lot. Okada tends to be that quiet guy that comes in the ring and takes care of business and is just an absolute top tier superstar, and will be until he decides it's time to call it quits. But in the midst of Ospreay calling out Kazuchika Okada, Shingo Takagi interrupted, and he demanded the first title match. So I'm sure that will be scheduled and be available on the New Japan World streaming service soon. Shingo it is I had mixed emotions on Shingo Takagi. I remember when he first came out. I want to say last year, maybe. I would have to look up the date for sure. It's either last year or the year before, and he joined Los Ingobernables do Japan, and I saw him wrestle, and I wasn't impressed at the beginning. He was received by the fans as an absolute legend, and shame on me for not doing more homework on Shingo. I didn't at the time understand his level of fame with the New Japan fans when he was announced as a new member. But to be honest, I saw him wrestle at the beginning, and it's like I said, I just wasn't really impressed. And but then as time went on, he had a match just recently with Jeff Cobb, and they absolutely tore the building down. It was incredible because you've got a guy the size and strength of Jeff Cobb and Shingo Takagi, he's a big guy. He's a thick guy, but he doesn't look to be that size of Jeff Cobb, but he matched him move for move, throw for throw, just completely manhandled Cobb, just like Cobb manhandled him. He fits right in with the big, strong, just punishing superstars, and he fits in with the smaller guys that tend to be a little bit lighter and a little bit more airborne. Shingo is definitely a guy to watch in New Japan. He's definitely on my radar now, and I watch when he wrestles, and deservedly so. He's a phenomenal talent. So I'm looking forward, as much as I'm looking forward to Kazuchika Okada wrestling Will Ospreay for this world title. I'm also very interested in Shingo Takagi wrestling Ospreay for this title. It's just be a phenomenal match either way. I want to move on to WWE right now, and just an amazing development just this within the last probably less than a week. Chris Jericho, of course, of AEW, the Inner Circle leader, was the first AEW World Champion. He was announced as being a guest on Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions podcast, and this podcast, of course, airs on the WWE Network on Peacock, and just really, really mind-blowing considering Vince McMahon's policies and feelings to outside organizations and wrestlers. I don't know that anybody saw this coming, and Dave Meltzer reported in his newsletter that Austin actually contacted Vince McMahon, prior to booking Jericho for his show, and he asked him if it was okay. And McMahon did, in fact, say it was all right for Austin to have Jericho on his show. Now, keep in mind, Vince McMahon, in his advanced age, and a lot of times I think he may speak sometimes not thinking it through. And I'm not saying that as an insult to his age. It's just Vince McMahon strikes me as the kind of person that will make snap decisions just based on things that aren't really relevant to the situation. So I think Austin did the right thing, and after he got the initial okay from McMahon, he followed up with another text message asking him, "Are you sure it's okay to put Chris Jericho on the podcast?" And Vince McMahon replied the text with a thumbs up emoji. So I can't wait to really hear this podcast and listen to what Jericho has to say. I don't know if Austin has restrictions on his podcast. He doesn't strike me as the type of person that would work well with restrictions. Austin has always been just a larger-than-life character, always outspoken, very truthful, speaks his mind. He's not going to give you a line of bull. So I don't know if he's going to be given complete free reign to talk to Jericho about anything that he wants to, and especially involving AEW. I mean, that's going to be the elephant in the room. If Austin can openly talk to Chris Jericho about AEW on the Broken Skull Sessions on the WWE Network, could this be a sign that the Forbidden Door is opening further? Hard for me to believe with Vince McMahon, but we're just going to have to take this a little bit of time and see where it leads. I don't know for sure that we're going to get a complete in-depth interview on this podcast like I think we would all hope to. I think we all kind of would like to see just complete honesty from Jericho, because Jericho is another, just like Austin. Jericho doesn't pull any punches. Jericho says what he feels, and that's what makes him arguably one of the top contenders for the greatest of all time in wrestling. Is Jericho is all surface. There's nothing, no hidden agendas. Jericho does what he wants to do, says what he wants to say, and it's a very uncomfortable situation for him to be stifled or put on a leash. So I just still don't know what to expect from this podcast, but I am looking forward to it. I do want to hear the whole thing, and I'll probably wind up listening to it a couple times just to make sure I'm not missing anything. But a little bit of time, we'll take it and see where it goes. Also from the WWE, we're in WrestleMania week, of course. WrestleMania is coming up next weekend, and it is, as every year with WrestleMania, is the WWE Hall of Fame inductions. And I have here a list of inductees for this year, the 2021 Hall of Fame. And they are as follows. We have Molly Holly. We have Eric Bischoff, the Great Khali, Kane, Rob Van Dam. And then the celebrity inductees are Ozzy Osbourne and William Shatner. And also the Warrior Award is going to be given to Titus O'Neil this year. I'd say that's well deserved. But, I'm kind of baffled, I would say, every year with the Hall of Fame inductees, because Hall of Fame just, it indicates the top, the upper echelon, the best that your organization, your company, your promotion has to offer. I've been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame a couple times in my life, and you walk through the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and it is literally the best of the best to ever play football. And you really can't make an argument and say that anybody that's in the Hall of Fame doesn't deserve to be there. I've yet to make it to the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's another place I'd like to go, and honestly, I'm not much of a baseball fan, or I'm actually not a baseball fan at all, so I'd be kind of a fish out of water in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I couldn't honestly tell you who deserves to be there and who doesn't, but I'd love to see the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's another sport that I'm passionate about, but been to the Pro Football, and it's list. I look at this list, and the first name that just jumps right off the sheet and slaps me right in the face is the Great Khali. How in the world does the Great Khali fit in anywhere? In any year with the WWE, WWF roster, how does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Khali was one of those guys that Vince McMahon noticed because of his size and his look, and he had absolutely no wrestling talent. He just didn't. His run in the WWE was completely forgettable. There was nothing that happened, and I was very, very, very much engrossed in WWE programming during the time that Khali was added to the roster, and there was nothing there that just made me thought, wow, this guy should definitely be Hall of Fame bound someday, because it's just not the case. I look at other names, and you can Molly Holly. I'm not sure her contributions merit a Hall of Fame induction, but at least Molly Holly was an active wrestler, and when she wrestled, it was believable. And she took part in promos, and she worked with Bob Holly, and it's just she fit. She was a part of the Holly family, and it fits, and it makes sense. Kane, of course, you can't argue Kane. Brothers of Destruction, Undertaker's brother, and with Paul Bearer, he made that huge, huge impact when he interfered in the Undertaker Shawn Michaels the first Hell in the Cell match ever. Kane is definitely WWE legend and definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. RVD, I can't argue that one. He was one of the biggest names in ECW. He came to the WWF, WWE, and had a very memorable career there. A lot of matches that you won't forget. So absolutely deserved. Eric Bischoff, Yeah, of course. Eric Bischoff was not only the WWF, WWE, but WCW and Impact. He's been a major influence in every promotion that he's been involved in. And, not always good, some bad, but I can't argue Bischoff being in the Hall of Fame at all. So it's just, you look at these names and you try to rationalize, why is the Great Khali in this list? And I just can't answer that question. And it just seems like every year this happens. And I might do that as one of my episodes. I was thinking about doing a Square Circle News Network extra, where instead of just covering the news, I would do like a list type podcast. And, say for instance here, I would do top 10 WWE Hall of Fame inductees that do not deserve to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. But it's just, yeah, I would definitely want to do some sort of show in the near future, in the future, talking about inductees that just don't belong there, because there's more. And this is another thing that I've never been a fan of, is the Celebrity Hall of Fame inductees. And, this year they've got Ozzy Osbourne and William Shatner. And yes, they've taken part in they've taken part in skits and things in the WWE, WWF, but would I call them Hall of Fame worthy? I wouldn't say that. You want your Hall of Fame to mean something, and this is one of the biggest arguments with the WWE Hall of Fame, is that it's really just it's an on paper acknowledgement. There is no Hall of Fame building. There is no Hall of busts. There's just nothing. You're in the Hall of Fame, you get a ring, and that's really all you have to show that you're in the Hall of Fame. And, fans can never go and visit and see the Ric Flair display or the Hulk Hogan display or, anything. The Andre the Giant display. It's just, there's nothing there. And I think if I was to take control of the WWE amidst the huge list of changes that I would implement, this is one of the first things I would address. And it's not as important as other things as far as getting WWE programming back on track, but I think it's really important for just the historic acknowledgement of some of the greats that have passed through the halls of the WWE, the WWF. Up until recently, with the dropping ratings and finally having competition, WWE, WWF was the place, the destination for any young professional wrestler. And with the current condition and climate in wrestling, it's just not anymore. You've got more wrestlers trying to get out of their contracts with WWE than I think you do have wrestlers fighting to get in. So I think for the sake of the talents that built this company, the talents that made it as great as it had been at one point, you deserve some form of physical, solid acknowledgement of these people's contributions, and a place for fans to take part in and go. And I can't imagine that there's not enough fans that wouldn't want to go to an actual WWE Hall of Fame. And you go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and there's all sorts of, it's not just pictures and busts. There's interactive displays. There's things you can do, you can take part in, and you do the same thing with pro wrestling. I can't imagine fans not making the trip to be a part of that. I would go, even with my current feelings towards the WWE. I would definitely go, because there are so many talents that I grew up watching and that I followed through, the major parts of their career. There's just, I would definitely take part in that. I would definitely want to experience it and be able to appreciate things from another perspective that up until that point I hadn't had the chance to do. So, again, I think it's a good idea, and I think I'm definitely going to do a Hall of Fame show at some point in the near future, and a lot of things I want to talk about there. There was a sort of I don't know how loud it got, but there was a rant last week during the NXT show I believe it was following the show in the locker room, Dave Meltzer reported on the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Triple H was visibly upset and ranting about the fact that NXT is now moving to Tuesday nights. He had talked about how 6 years ago, following WrestleMania, NXT recorded its first show and they had a sellout crowd at their first show. And the words I think he used was they were being bullied off of Wednesday nights, even though that they were originally on Wednesday nights. And I got to take exception to that because, yes, NXT was on Wednesday nights since their inception, but they weren't on a network. They weren't on USA. They weren't on a TV network. They were on the WWE network, and that's considerably different. You know, you have the WWE network. You're a subscriber. You can consume their product, any part of their product, at any time you want. You can tailor their programming to your schedule. So it's not like if you didn't sit down in front of your streaming service, however you broadcast it in your house, be it on your smart TV, computer, whatever, there's no saying that come Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, I got to be sitting in front of the TV because I'm not going to be able to see NXT. I know plenty of people who had the WWE network who didn't watch NXT till the next day, till a couple days later because of commitments, because of work schedules. And even it's still that way with DVR. So to say that somebody bullied you off of Wednesday nights is just ridiculous. Because first of all, you look back to the beginning of AEW, and what did the WWE do? Their first move was to take NXT off of the WWE network and put it on USA in the same time slot that AEW was in. And Triple H had the big mouth at the beginning, calling AEW a pissant t-shirt company. Nobody in the WWE expected them to go anywhere. And let's face it, I'd be, as much as I'm a fan of AEW, I'd be willing to say that probably a lot of people outside of the WWE didn't think AEW stood a chance. Imagine the complexity and the logistics of building a brand new professional wrestling promotion from the ground up, even with Tony Khan's money. You know, you had a bunch of talent that was well known exclusively to hardcore fans who followed the independent pro wrestling circuit and the New Japan Pro Wrestling promotion. Your only other talent that brought people in was Chris Jericho. And I'll argue that even if Chris Jericho had not signed with AEW, if he was not there from day one, from the press conference, the fan rally that announced a promotion, if Jericho had not joined, I still think AEW would have started and they would still be here today and they'd still be building. But, you know, you're saying that you were bullied off the air by this promotion. Look, the AEW didn't want this war. They didn't put their program on a Monday night. They didn't put their program on a Friday night. They put their program on a Wednesday night, unopposed on TV, and you made the choice to move your show to USA Network on TV because you tried to drive them off the air. You thought that NXT was good enough of a program to take all the fans from AEW to make it fail, to make them close up shop in their first year. We know that was your intention, but it wasn't enough. And I'll tell you why it wasn't enough, because NXT is, I have no problem with the talent in NXT. The NXT show is heads and shoulders above anything the WWE puts out on Raw and SmackDown. The talent is more talented. The action is better. The matches are more intense. All a better show than Raw and SmackDown. It just is. And you know what? There's nothing that's going to change that, except for the fact that Vince McMahon doesn't have any faith in NXT. Vince McMahon only has faith in the product that he is hands-on in. And Triple H has been, I'll give Triple H kudos for what he's done with NXT, but he's way out of line here. He's just so far out of line. And the reason NXT struggles is because at the end of the day, call it whatever you want, it is the WWE's developmental brand. And you never know when talent is going to get plucked up out of NXT and put on the main roster shows. And, for me, let me give you an analogy. I love football. I love hockey. But you know what? As much as I like to watch the NHL, I'm not going to watch the AHL because it's the NHL Developmental League. And although there's a lot of great talent in there that someday is going to make it into the NHL and be absolute superstars, I just can't get invested in them where they are right now. It doesn't have the big league feel. It doesn't have, any of those things. It is what it is. And I'm sorry, but NXT is the same thing. NXT is the developmental roster. And yes, I could probably make a list of 30, if not more, superstars who are on the NXT roster that should be featured on the WWE roster. But they never will be. They'll be called up and they'll be buried because that's their track record. That's what Vince McMahon does. So I have no confidence that it's worth investing anything in AEW, or I'm sorry, NXT, unfortunately, because it's treated like the dirty little secret. Vince McMahon, he wants to sign talent, and he wants to assign talent to NXT. He wants to stock the roster, but he doesn't want to do it because he wants to develop that talent. He does it because he wants to keep that talent away from other organizations. So, they're shooting themselves in the foot with this whole thing, and I just think it's just completely cheap and arrogant to say that anybody bullied you out of anything because they tried to work. AEW is obviously working to make wrestling better as a whole. They're partnering with other organizations. They're partnering with Impact. They're partnering with New Japan Pro Wrestling, with AAA. There's with the NWA. There's no anybody trying to be better than anybody else and deny the existence of other organizations, because that's just crazy. So whatever you think you're accomplishing by just trying to be the big dog on the block, just shut everybody out, and we're going to be the ones because we have endless money and endless talent. You can have all the money in the world, and you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't use any of your resources the right way, eventually it will catch up with you. And that's where I feel the WWE is headed at some point. There's still, you can't argue the fact that there's nothing bigger in the world of pro wrestling than the WWE. It is what it is. But there will come a time when the tide's going to turn, and it may be too late for them to adjust because they're refusing to adjust now. The last thing I want to talk about is Andrade. And just a few days ago, he released a picture on Twitter of, he had a blank page in front of him, but the story he was trying to tell is that he had signed a new contract. So Andrade has signed with someone. No clue who yet. It could be New Japan Pro Wrestling. It could be AEW. It could be Impact. With Andrade's talent level, I doubt that it's Impact. I think he fits either in AEW or New Japan Pro Wrestling. So we'll just have to wait and see. I was going to say there's a chance that now that he's released this picture of signing this contract that he could turn up on AEW. But I don't know, because there's another thing I want to talk about is just a few days ago, Chris Jericho talked about on his podcast that TNT, Turner Network Television, had come to AEW after the Sting unveiling, the Sting arriving in AEW on that first show he was on, that they didn't really want any more surprises like that as far as signing new talent, because they wanted to take advantage of a ratings pop. So that was why the Paul White signing and why the Christian signing was, there was information given ahead of time before these things happen, so that there would be a chance to build an audience to appreciate and watch these things and boost ratings. I kind of like the surprise factor, but we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, it is what it is. You know, TNT is your network, and you want to play nice with the bosses. So we'll see. Well, I'm sure they'll come to a medium ground and agree to handle things a certain way. But only time will tell. But as far as Andrade, you know, where's he gonna pop up? I really don't know for sure. I hate to throw shade at Impact, but Impact is still a very small fish in a very big pond. And they've gotten ratings bumps recently because of Tony Khan working with them and putting Kenny Omega and other wrestlers on their programming. You know, Matt Hardy and Private Party have been on there recently, and Tony Khan himself is releasing these promos every week on Tuesday nights during Impact to just really boost awareness and boost ratings all around. This helps everybody. But we'll just have to wait and see. Andrade is going to pop up someplace. He's far too talented to not be a major part of somebody's roster. So where he goes, we'll just have to wait and see. That's going to be it for today. Again, thank you so much for joining me. If you made it this far, I'm going to ask you again, and I'm going to keep asking you every episode. So I hope you don't get tired of hearing it. But please click the like button. Please subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. I appreciate you so much for being here. I hope everybody had a great, if you do observe and celebrate Easter, I hope you had a great holiday with your families. And as always, please be good to yourself and be good to each other. Thank you again for everything, and we'll see you next time.